Hey everyone, welcome to Liquid Art, where we host drinking and painting parties for absolute beginners. So I really hope you enjoy this Parrot tutorial. It's all step by step and you can pop this video on pause at any point. So when you are ready, I'm going to show you everything you're going to need for this painting today. So we've got a canvas board here in front of us. You'll notice that it's got some squares already drawn onto it. So there's actually 8 by 8 on this square canvas board. You could paint it a different way if you want to. What we're going to use is we're going to use some kitchen roll, a pencil, a rubber. We've got 2 paintbrushes, big and small, a jar of water, and then on my palette over here I've got black, white, yellow, red, blue and sky blue. Now my palette is nice and dirty, it's because I used it before, so apologies for that, but I've covered it in cling film as well for easy cleaning. So for our first step, we're going to take our pencil and we're going to be drawing out our parrot. So up here in the corner, I've given you a little layout for you, and what we're going to do is we're going to start over here on the beak, and basically with the grid method you're just going to work through one square at a time so you get your proportions just right. So you're just going to follow this image and we're just going to slowly work our way around. I'm going to start with the neck of our parrot and then go from there. Just make sure you do this really nice and lightly with your pencil, just in case you go wrong you can rub it out nice and easily. So now this video is just going to speed up just a little bit for you guys. This is just so you can paint at your own speed. Personally, I really love using the grid method. You can take your time with it and it gets your proportions just right. So just keep going and just make sure you're going through each one of these grid lines and making sure that you're following one square at a time, doing this really nice and lightly. And if you go wrong, you can always rub parts out and just do it again. So I'm now just doing the details on the face, so just make sure that you're going to start doing around where the eye is. The eye is going to be really important, and the little kind of marks around his eye. We will paint over this obviously later, but you just want to mark that out for now, and they're just kind of nice and symmetrical. Don't worry if you've done them a little bit differently to mine, but just try and keep them nice and close together for these kind of red dots that are going to go on here. So once you have finished drawing out, the next bit for you to do is just to rub out those grid lines for me. So just take your rubber, rub this out, and try not to brush it away too much, do a little rubbings. Instead, what I'd rather you did was tap it or blow it away, and just make sure they're away from you before we start painting, because you don't want it to get caught up in your paint. So once you have finished that, we are now going to get painting. So what I'm going to do, we're going to work on our background to begin with. I'm going to take this big brush, give it a good wash and a little bit of a dry. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some dark blue and some white and mix it together. This will make a really nice light colour for our sky. I want this to be a little bit duller than the blue that we're going to use on our parrot, because I want that to be really bold, which is why we're using this one. So we're just going to fill out these little areas here. And then we're going to use some green on top of this to kind of make it look like there's a bit of a tree situation going on in the background. So you can take some more blue into this if you want to, and you can even take a tiny bit of black in, but when you do that it will go super dark, so you only want a tiny bit. And we're just going to work our way around our parrot, and you're just going to fill in these little areas here. See, the black went a little bit too dark, so you can just brush straight back on top with that blue that we mixed earlier. So just make sure as well you're doing the edge of your canvas as you go. If you want to switch to a smaller paintbrush as well at any point, please feel free to. It can help you when you get like really close to the edge of the Parrot. So now we're going to go on to the green, so give your paintbrush a really good wash, a little bit of a dry. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take some yellow and some blue and mix it together. Now with this one, you might want to add some sky blue into it as well. If you use the darker blue, it's going to make a darker green, as you'll see as I demonstrate here. So I'm just going to show you that now, and then you can decide from there what shade of green you want to use. I've also added a tiny bit of white to just make it a little bit more opaque, and this will help cover up the blue that we painted before. So first we're going to make a slightly darker shade of green, and then I'm going to mix a really vibrant one in a few minutes that we can paint over the top of that to really give our greenery some nice texture. So you're just dabbing this on over the top of some of our blues that we already did. So now we're going to mix a different shade of green. I'm going to use some sky blue and some yellow to do this. And we're just going to paint this around again. If you preferred the colour before, you can stick with that, or you can go with this one now, and then we'll go a little bit lighter with it in just a minute. So as we work our way around this bit, we're now going to start adding a little bit of white into our paint. So just dab this straight on top of where you were painting this green, and it will just lighten certain areas for you. You can do as much or as little as you like. You can go with a really dark green if you want to, or you can bring it lighter. It's completely up to you. So now I'm just going to remix some of that light green colour using some sky blue, yellow and some white. And I'm just going to paint this on this part here. So I'm just adding a few little bits. Remember, if you're doing this green part over your blue, you've got to do the edge of your canvas as well. That's called wrapping your canvas. And I'm just bringing this all the way along the Parrot here. And then we can blend it if we need to. So you would just use a clean brush and just dab it just a little bit more. So just give that paintbrush a wash for me and put it to the side. Now we're going to take our small paintbrush and some white, and we're going to fill in our beak. Now don't worry if this has got a little bit of a green tinge to it. We are going to add some colours to it later on, but you just want to make sure this is nice and white for now. And then we're going to use our white paintbrush again to go over this kind of white section around his face. So where kind of the eye is, and all around his the bottom of his beak and his chin. I just want you to paint that white for now. Try not to cover up all of your pencil marks, otherwise you won't be able to see them later on. So now for our next bit, we're going to go on to working on our Parrot's kind of coat. So we're going to do his feathers to begin with. We're going to do a little bit of a light green again. We're going to go a little bit more yellowy though this time. So I'm going to take that same green that we used for the background, and then I'm just going to add a little bit more yellow and some more white into this. Now if you want to do your Parrot's colours completely different, you can do as well, just trying to make sure they don't clash too much with the background. So I'm just brushing this little bit on here, and then we're going to go into a bit more of like a turquoisey sky blue colour in just a second. So with that sky blue, you might want to add a tiny bit of yellow into it just to brighten it up a little bit, and some white, and you're just going to fill this part of the wing in as well. And don't forget to bring this bit over the edge of your canvas as well if you've continued doing that. I'm then just adding a little bit more white on top just to brighten up a few of these feathers, and they don't need to be blended in at all. You want them to be quite bold actually, so you can add a little bit more of the darker blue in if you want to as well, and keep your paintbrush strokes really nice and loose. This will just give it a little bit of an effect of feathers for you. So now we're going to start with the red on our parrot's feathers. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take some red up here, and then we can start to add a few different shades of the red as well. So you're slowly going to work your way around, keep this nice and loose, and it doesn't have to be an exact straight line because the feathers can kind of be drifting off if you want them to as well. So now we're going to mix a slightly darker shade of red. So I'm going to use a little bit of black. You will only need a really tiny amount with your red. It will instantly go a lot darker. So you don't want to go too dark just yet, but we're just going to keep this kind of around the face and around the beak here, and just gently brush it in, and it will give the effect of feathers. So you want these to flow a little bit. You don't want them to be like blocks or squares or anything. You're just gently going to move this colour around. So we're just going to keep working our way around using some of the red and then using some of the darker red as well. And you can just slowly see which areas I'm going to be using the darker red and then the lighter red as well. I'm just going to use this colour just to dot around the face here. So I'm not really using a full stroke, I'm just like dabbing my brush just a tiny bit. If you need a little bit more water, you can do. This will make the paint a little bit thinner, it will go a little bit clearer as you use it, or you can go thicker if you want to as well. I'm now just going inside these circles here using a little bit more of the red, and again I'm just using a little dabbing motion. So I'm not going huge with this paint, I'm just using really tiny little marks here, and I'm just dabbing it out so it's not a continuous line. I'm now going around with just my small brush again. You can switch to a bigger brush if you want to. I'm just going to use this kind of for the edges, and then I'll fill in with the big brush in just a minute. Again, I'm just using that bright red colour, and then I'm going to start adding a little bit more white just to thicken it a little bit more and add some lighter tones, and then we're going to use the dark tones again. You don't have to go super dark just yet, we'll be using some black at one of our later stages, but you're just kind of creating these feathers. So now I'm just using my big brush as well, just to add a little bit more red on top. It's just because this area is quite big. It would just take me forever if I was going to use my small brush, but if you want to stick with that one, you can do. And then we'll use the smaller brush in just a minute just to add the darker feathers in, using the small one, and it will give the same effect for you. So now I'll switch back to my small paintbrush, and I'm just using just a little bit white on top of this red just to break up the feathers a little bit, so it looks like the light is hitting a few of them differently. And now I'm going back in with my darker colour red, and I'm just marking out this wing here. And then I'm going to bring this across and work a little bit more on the neck. So you just brush this down, and then I'm going to start on this other wing here. So I'm doing the exact same technique as before, just using my small paintbrush and a bit of this darker shade of red just to break up and show where the feathers are. So now we're going to do a bit of shading on our beak. So what I want you to do is take a little bit of water on your brush and just use just a bit of white over the top of this area here. So using parts of your paper towel that has the different shades on it, so we've got red for example, we can just brush on top of that with a little bit of white and it will just give this little bit of a different tone into our beak. You can leave this bit if you want to, or you can add more white to it, it's completely up to you. And then we'll do similar with a little bit of a green. So now I've washed my brush, I've taken a little bit of the green off of the kitchen roll, and then I've brushed white on top, just to make this have a little bit of a different tone. So now we're going to work with a bit of black and grey to make the little features for us. So we're going to go around a bit of the beak here, just brushing a tiny bit of black in with our small paintbrush. So we're going to do this little bit here, and then we're going to outline part of the beak, and then we're going to do like our other bits and with some grey as well. So you can switch this up if you want to stick with the grey, if you want to stick with the black, it's completely up to you. So I'm just filling this section in, and then I'm going to outline the beak. I don't want you to outline the whole thing, this is just kind of the bottom kind of V shape here. And then wash that brush, and now we're going to mix a grey. So you take a little bit of black and some white and mix it together. Remember, black will turn it really, really dark, so you just need a little bit. And then I'm brushing that grey onto the bottom half of the beak here. And then wash your paintbrush for me. A little bit of a dry, and you can use that clean brush just to blend this in just a tiny bit. Now we're going to go back with some black, and we're going to fill this area in here. So make sure there's a little bit of a white gap between it. And then I'm gonna just go around just a little bit of the eye. So this is going to be kind of the outside shape of the eye. We're going to use a little bit of grey for this. So we're just outlining that kind of outer circle of the eye, and then we're going to give it a little bit of a shade in just a second, and then we'll do the actual centre of the eye as well. So I'm going to keep a really, really light grey here, and kind of around the lower section of this eye, I'm just dabbing this in. It's just so that it gives it a little bit more of a 3D effect. I'm now going to stick with that light grey just to create these kind of almost wrinkles near the beak. So you just want to kind of crisscross a few of these over the top of each other. Try not to do so many. It's good if you kind of keep them the same kind of width as you did with your kind of these feathers around the eye as well. I'm then bringing a little bit of that grey colour around this part of the eye as well. And then we're going to go in with a bit more black, and we're going to do kind of the centre of the eye. Just make sure you leave a little bit of a gap on one part of this. It's going to be kind of where the light of the eye is. So now we're going to take a little bit more of a light grey, so that means a little bit more white with the black, and we're just going to do a few little kind of lighter sections here in this black bit. Again, I'm just sticking with that small paintbrush, and we're only doing a little bit here. And now for our last little bit, we're going to use a bit more of the black. You don't have to use loads of this, and we're just going to go kind of around the head, just a little bit here. And then we're going to work into a few of these parts on the face, just to give a little bit more of a darker shadow. You can leave this bit if you want to, or you can add a little bit, it's completely up to you. So we're going to slowly work down to work in a bit of a shade here or below his kind of chin, and then a little bit more on the feathers on each side, and just like really defining the wing as well. I'm just gonna now wash my paintbrush and just add a tiny bit more white to the beak, so just make sure your brush is nice and clean if you're gonna do this. Just a tiny little bit more. And then if you think you're about finished, what I would just say to do as well is to just sign the bottom of your canvas. I would do a little signature in the left hand corner, maybe here. So I really hope you've all enjoyed this. We'd love to see how you did, so please tag us on Instagram or Facebook at rbliquider. And if you ever want to come and join one of our virtual drinking and painting events, go check us out. We're on Zoom, and I hope to see you again soon.